A lot of people spend years believing that losing weight requires the courage to suffer. Endless fasting, cutting every last carb, swapping real meals for shakes. It almost feels like some kind of modern self-punishment ritual. Anna, an ordinary person, went through that cycle so many times she already knew the ending. Quick weight loss, followed by that rebound that crushes anyone's motivation. Studies show that extreme strategies tend to confuse the body, not speed it up. What's interesting is how convincing these extreme fixes sound. They promise control, simplicity, fast results, and when someone's exhausted from trying, any shortcut feels tempting. But in real life, the mind may buy in, yet the body doesn't follow. Anna learned that the hard way. After cutting almost every carb, she noticed her mood tanking, her energy disappearing, and her appetite crashing over her like a rude wave. Nothing sustainable works like that. The most dangerous part of these miracle methods isn't the weight you drop. It's the belief system you pick up along the way. People start thinking eating is risky. Hunger is the enemy. Pleasure means failure. And when the body fights back with even more hunger, they read it as weakness, not a biological safety response. Some research suggests this mindset fuels impulsive behavior, the exact opposite of the discipline people are trying to build. Anna eventually realized the problem wasn't willpower, it was the mental model. When she began trying smaller changes, adjusting meal times, paying attention to real hunger, reorganizing her plate, something unexpected happened. Her weight finally started to shift. Not because of sacrifice, but because of strategy. And that raises one unavoidable question. If the extreme methods fail so often, what actually decides when the body starts using fat as energy? When Anna started paying closer attention to her own body, she realized something she had never considered before. Fat isn't a villain, it's more like a biological safe. She remembered an old trip where she walked several miles during a tour and, surprisingly, felt less hungry than on a regular day. It was as if her body had a backup battery and released energy little by little, almost like a quiet generator that kicks in only when needed. That safe only opens when insulin is low, something most quick fix methods never explain. On days when she ate more balanced meals, Anna noticed she could focus better at work without that mid-afternoon crash. Studies indicate that when insulin isn't being triggered nonstop, the body has an easier time accessing stored fat, which can help keep energy steady throughout the day without that constant swing between hunger and fullness. She also began to understand why certain foods and timing seemed to affect her appetite so much. If she spent the morning eating lots of simple carbs, she felt a stubborn kind of hunger before lunch. On more balanced days, her energy stayed predictable, almost like her body was saying, "Relax, I still have fuel in reserve." It's interesting how this small detail completely changes the experience, and most people don't even notice it. Over time, Anna realized that understanding this internal reserve made everything more logical. She stopped seeing fat as the enemy and started seeing it as a resource her body taps into when conditions allow it. And that leads to an unavoidable question. What really blocks this access to fat in everyday life? The next part reveals the centerpiece of the whole story: insulin and the major role it plays in making fat loss so difficult. Anna only started to understand her own body when she realized that insulin works like a doorman. When it's high, the door to your stored fat stays shut. She remembered mornings when she'd eat a breakfast full of fast carbs and just a few hours later feel a hunger that made no sense. It was like someone was messing with her internal switches and throwing everything off balance. Glucose spikes throughout the day trigger insulin spikes, and most people don't even notice it happening. Studies suggest that these jumps can make it harder for the body to access stored energy, which leads to bigger hunger and that constant sense of low energy. Anna started noticing that when she prioritized more balanced meals, her appetite became more predictable, and that alone changed her day in a practical way. Another important discovery was realizing how meals packed with simple carbs kept her body on high alert all the time. Every quick rise in glucose demanded an equally quick response from insulin. That back and forth created an effect that made Anna more impulsive around food, not because she lacked discipline, but because her physiology was under pressure. Understanding this mechanism finally made something clear to her, something that had always felt unfair. It was never about willpower, it was about energy access. When insulin stays elevated, the body prefers to store instead of release. And that leads to the question that usually opens the first real window of clarity: which foods intensify this cycle and which ones help break it? That answer starts to take shape when you look at how fast carbs affect hunger and metabolism. Anna always thought it was strange how certain foods could flip her hunger on like a light switch. A simple slice of white bread or an overly sweet juice could throw everything off within a couple of hours. She used to say it felt like throwing too much kindling on a fire that burns out too fast, a quick burst of heat followed by cold ashes. That constant back and forth created a kind of restless appetite she could never really explain. Highly refined carbs usually cause a rapid spike in blood sugar, followed by an equally fast drop. This directly affects blood sugar, and some studies suggest that these swings can contribute to cravings and low energy throughout the day. Instead of giving you steady fuel, these foods act more like quick-burn fuel that disappears almost instantly. Anna started noticing these patterns by paying closer attention to her routine. On mornings when she chose sweeter breakfasts, she felt that intense hunger kicking in even before lunchtime. But on days with more balanced choices, she noticed a different kind of calm, almost like her body was running on cruise control. The contrast was so clear, it felt like a lesson in real time, showing how much fast carbs were influencing her metabolism. That insight helped Anna make small changes that had a big impact. She realized she didn't need to cut foods out completely. She just needed to understand how her body reacted to each one. And then a natural question started to form. If the quality of your carbs matters this much, what about the role of sleep and stress in this whole process? The answer opens a crucial layer about how the body handles energy when it's under pressure. Anna always thought that sleeping less just meant waking up tired, but she soon realized the impact went far beyond that. During weeks of short nights, she noticed a stubborn kind of hunger first thing in the morning, even though she hadn't done anything to deserve that urge to eat. It felt like her body was asking for extra fuel to make up for the wear and tear it couldn't recover from overnight. Research shows that poor sleep can change the way the body handles glucose, making it more sensitive to sudden spikes and dips. And when cortisol, the stress hormone, is running high, that sensitivity gets even worse. Anna saw this clearly on her busier workdays. She would crave sugary foods out of nowhere. Her energy swung all over the place, and even simple tasks became hard to focus on. This created a domino effect. With cortisol elevated, the body seems to protect stored fat and lean more on quick carbs, almost as if it were gearing up for a challenge that never actually happens. Anna realized that even when her meals stayed the same, her appetite grew whenever she slept less or dealt with stressful situations. It wasn't in her head, it was her body trying to adapt to the imbalance. Once she understood this dynamic, everything started making more sense. It wasn't only about what she ate, but the context in which she ate it. And that leads to a question that opens an important line of reflection. If the body behaves so differently under stress and lack of sleep, how does it react when the internal clock also gets involved? This is where the connection between metabolism and biological rhythm starts to show its true importance. Anna always thought eating was just about hunger, but she slowly realized timing plays a huge role. On days when she had an early lunch and a late dinner, she felt light through the afternoon, but oddly heavy when it was time to sleep. It was as if her body was saying that fuel showed up at the wrong time. And in a way, that's exactly how the body's internal clock operates. During the day, the body handles carbs much better because insulin sensitivity is naturally higher. That means the body uses energy more efficiently. At night, though, that whole system starts to slow down. Studies suggest that the body responds less favorably to glucose later in the day, which can lead to storing more of it. Anna noticed this when she compared those light, easy mornings with evenings when she felt bloated, even though she ate the same amount. This shift throughout the day also affected her hunger. Earlier hours felt more balanced, while after sunset, it seemed like any carb instantly turned into extra weight. It wasn't something she could see on the spot, but she definitely felt that slow energy and sluggish digestion. It's wild how the exact same meal can be interpreted so differently by the body just because the clock changed. Understanding this pattern helped Anna make small adjustments, like moving more of her carbs to the hours when her body was better prepared for them. And that sparked a question she couldn't ignore. If the body's clock changes the way it handles carbs, what happens when those carbs show up really late at night? The answer usually surprises anyone who never paid attention to that detail. Anna noticed a strange pattern. On the days when she had dinner late, especially meals loaded with carbs, she would wake up feeling like her body had been stuck all night. It was as if her system had been holding on to that energy without knowing what to do with it. And in a way, that is exactly what happens, because at night, the body shifts into energy-saving mode and is far less prepared to handle a glucose spike. When carbs show up during that late window, the body tends to burn less and store more. It is not a rigid rule, but it is a trend seen in several studies. Since insulin sensitivity drops at night, the metabolic response slows down, which can lead to more energy being stored. Anna remembered nights when she ate pasta or dessert and felt like everything weighed twice as much. That mix of lower energy expenditure, slower digestion, and higher glucose creates a kind of silent storm. The body chooses to store instead of use because it is getting ready to rest, not to move. Anna began to notice that when she made lighter choices or spread her carbs more evenly throughout the day, she slept better and woke up with steadier energy. Once she understood that, she started adjusting not only what she ate, but when she ate. Small changes that made everything more predictable. And that brings up an inevitable question. If the timing of carbs makes such a difference, could breakfast also determine how your hunger behaves throughout the day? That detail tends to surprise anyone who has never tested it in real life. Anna used to skip breakfast whenever she was in a rush, thinking it would help her cut calories for the day. But the outcome was always the same. Before noon, she was starving, irritated, and grabbing whatever quick snack crossed her path. It was like starting the day with an empty gas tank and expecting the car to run smoothly until lunch. When she began adding protein and fiber first thing in the morning, the difference was immediate. Her body seemed to respond with a calm, "All right, now I can work at the right pace." Studies suggest that eating protein early in the day can help reduce hunger over the next several hours, not because of magic, but because it keeps energy more stable. Anna noticed it even reduced her late afternoon sweet cravings. This shift also helped with blood sugar control, since fiber and protein tend to create more stable responses. Instead of a quick rise followed by a sudden crash, her energy stayed steady. And on busy days, that made a real difference. She could walk a few more miles throughout the day, and still keep her mood more predictable. A tiny adjustment with a big impact. That discovery made Anna look at breakfast differently, not as an obligation, but as a tool. And it raised an important question. If the type of carbohydrate plays such a big role in stability, which ones actually help keep you full for longer? Understanding that changes your entire relationship with carbs. Anna started noticing that some foods gave her a steadier kind of energy, almost like fueling an engine that runs smoothly instead of rushing. It was completely different from fast carbs, which turned her day into a roller coaster. Whole and less processed foods worked like slow-release fuel, something she had never truly appreciated. Whole grains usually create gentler responses in blood sugar, and some studies suggest this can support longer-lasting fullness. Instead of causing a spike and then a crash, they keep a more stable flow of energy. Anna realized that when she added oatmeal, sweet potatoes, or brown rice to her meals, the hours between one meal and the next felt calmer, without that sudden urge for something sweet. What surprised her the most wasn't just the change in hunger, it was the change in mood. On days with slower carbs, she felt more grounded, almost as if her whole system was running in alignment. But when she chose white bread or sugary snacks, her energy blinked like a flickering light. That contrast helped Anna understand that not all carbs behave the same way in the body. The speed of digestion changes everything. With that clarity, she started making more intentional choices. Not out of restriction, but because the results were obvious. And then a question naturally came up, one that sparks a lot of curiosity. Is it possible to lower the glycemic impact of foods even when they aren't whole grains? The answer involves simple cooking techniques that most people never even try. Anna was surprised when she realized that the way she cooked certain foods completely changed how her body responded. It felt as if the kitchen had a few invisible tricks no one ever talks about. One of them was surprisingly simple: cooking, cooling, and then reheating carbs like rice or potatoes. That process increases the amount of resistant starch, which the body digests more slowly. Studies suggest that this method can soften the impact on blood sugar, keeping energy steadier throughout the day. Anna tried it during a busy week. She cooked a big batch of rice, stored it in the fridge, and used it over the next few days. She noticed she didn't get that rushed, anxious hunger she used to feel when she prepared everything fresh. It was like swapping a flash burn fuel for something that burns at a slow, stable pace. Another detail that changed her routine was adding acidity to her meals. Vinegar, lemon, and even some tangy sauces help slow down the digestion of carbohydrates. It isn't a magic trick, it's basic chemistry working in your favor. Anna started adding a splash of vinegar to her salad or squeezing lemon over her protein, and that combination made everything feel more balanced. Small decisions that, when added up, gave her a real sense of control. These adjustments taught Anna that the goal isn't cutting out entire food groups, but creating an internal environment that works more harmoniously. And that sparked an interesting question. If cooking methods and acidity make such a difference, could the way foods are combined on the plate also change the metabolic effect? The answer opens a whole new layer of strategy. Anna had always heard that eating well is about pairing well, but she never really understood how much that influenced her hunger throughout the day. When she started paying attention to her own plate, she realized that eating carbs on their own, the so-called naked carbs, made everything unstable. It was like lighting a match. Intense heat at first, then nothing. When she paired carbs with protein, fiber, and healthy fats, her body responded in a completely different way. These combinations slowed down digestion, creating a smoother release of energy. Studies suggest that this type of meal structure can help reduce blood sugar spikes and increase the feeling of fullness. Anna noticed that when she paired rice with vegetables and a solid source of protein, she could go hours without that impulsive hunger creeping in. She also noticed that these combinations helped her control her appetite better in the late afternoon, the exact time she used to snack without thinking. On days with more balanced meals, her energy felt steadier, and she even had the drive to walk a few miles after work. It felt like her body was finally getting the right message. With that understanding, Anna began to see her plate as a strategy instead of a battlefield between allowed and forbidden, and that raised an interesting question, one she couldn't ignore. If meal composition makes such a difference, could moving the body after eating influence this process too? When she finally learned the answer, it became one of the most practical tools in her daily routine. When Anna started noticing certain foods giving her a steadier kind of energy, it felt like her body was fueling a slow and steady engine. It was completely different from those fast carbs that turned her day into a roller coaster. Whole, less processed foods worked like slow-release fuel, something she had never really appreciated. Whole grains and other unprocessed carbs usually create smoother blood sugar responses, and some studies suggest they can help with longer-lasting fullness. Instead of giving you a spike and then leaving you with a crash, they provide a more constant flow of energy. Anna realized that when she added foods like oatmeal, sweet potatoes, or brown rice to her meals, the time between meals felt calmer, without that desperate urge for something sweet. What surprised her most wasn't just the change in hunger, but the shift in her mood. On days with slow digesting carbs, she felt more balanced, almost like her body was running on the right gear. But when she chose white bread or sweets, her energy flickered like a blinking lamp. That contrast showed her that not all carbs behave the same way. The speed of digestion changes everything. Once this clicked, she started making more intentional choices, not out of restriction, but because the results felt better in her daily life. And that raised a question that sparked her curiosity. Is it possible to reduce the glycemic impact of foods even when they aren't whole or slow digesting? The answer involves simple cooking techniques most people have never tried. Anna always thought eating was just about what she put on her plate until she found out that the order mattered more than she ever imagined. One day, she tried something simple. She started her meal with veggies, moved on to protein, and left the carbs for last. The result caught her attention. She felt less hungry hours later and noticed a steadier kind of energy, almost as if her body were processing everything at a calmer pace. Studies indicate that this sequence can help reduce insulin spikes, since fiber and protein slow down the digestion of carbohydrates. That small shift may contribute to fewer blood sugar peaks, and Anna felt that difference immediately. On days when she organized her plate this way, she said it was like dropping pebbles in a glass before pouring water, creating a barrier that keeps things from rushing up too fast. She also noticed that this order made her meals more satisfying. Starting with veggies and protein meant she reached the carbs without that early sense of urgency. It was like giving her body a heads up that energy was on the way, preventing those exaggerated responses. And the interesting part was that this strategy didn't require cutting anything out. just reorganizing the flow of the meal. With this small change, Anna started feeling more in control of her hunger without relying on strict restrictions. And that leads to a useful question. If order, timing, quality, and food combinations influence so much, how can someone organize all of this in a flexible and sustainable way in everyday life? That's where things finally start to fall into place. Anna had tried so many diets that she could practically write a book about frustration. But once she put together everything she had learned, timing, food combinations, meal order, cooking methods, something finally clicked. She realized she didn't have to live in a constant battle with food. All she needed was an eating style that matched her routine instead of fighting against it. Small adjustments, stacked over time, made all the difference. She started spreading her carbs throughout the day in a more strategic way, eating more of them earlier, adjusting portions based on how active she'd been, and using simple techniques that softened the impact on her blood sugar. Nothing extreme, just smarter choices. Studies suggest that this kind of structure can help keep energy levels more stable throughout the day. Anna felt that change almost immediately. She was less anxious around food and more in control of her own rhythm. The biggest lesson was understanding that flexibility doesn't mean chaos. It means giving the body predictable patterns without suffocating rules. Instead of avoiding foods, Anna learned how to manage them, using proteins and fiber as her foundation, adjusting carbs according to her needs, and fitting in light walks whenever possible. It felt like tuning an instrument until every part started playing in harmony. That shift turned eating into something lighter, less emotional, and far more functional. Anna started to connect the dots when she realized that her body didn't respond to extremes, it responded to consistency. Once she combined everything she had learned, the picture finally became clear. The timing of her meals, the way she paired foods, the order in which she ate them, the impact of sleep, and even those short walks after lunch. All of it worked together like gears in the same machine. Nothing in this process was about quick fixes. Each small adjustment simply created a more stable internal environment, one where hunger stopped calling the shots and her choices were guided by clarity rather than impulse. If any of this resonated with you, subscribing to the channel helps you keep receiving content that blends practical science, simple language, and sustainable everyday strategies. This content is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Results may vary. Always consult a healthcare provider before making significant changes to your diet or training routine.